Hi mentors, here we are in Module 5, and as you can see we have a guest speaker with us. I want to just refer back to the key questions. We're going to be talking about question 2. How can a mentor minimize a new teacher's stress and promote health and wellness? And I know I said earlier that as mentors, we sometimes are not the best role models for managing our stress. And Kristen Lee Costa is here with me today, and we have worked together on several courses at UMass and worked with teachers. And we will admit that we have been under stress while we're teaching and trying to do everything too.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to start by letting Kristen actually introduce herself. She comes with a varied background, and I'm so glad she can be here. You can download her bio. It's going to be attached in TaskStream, so you can see the specific qualifications that she brings to this conversation. So Kristen, congratulations, first of all,
Thank you.
on your doctorate.
Thank you.
Finishing that was a little stressful.
Yes.
And how did you manage your stress?
The ironies of life. Right?
Yes, it's true. It's true.
It's really great to be here, Carol. And this is certain, and welcome mentors. I'm really excited to have the chance to speak with you today and really be thoughtful around this issue that I think gets casually tossed around a lot. It's not a secret that teachers are under a lot of stress, but I think it can get trivialized. So part of, my mission today is to really have the mentors be thoughtful about ways that they can recognize it, prevent it, and advocate for, wellness for teachers and for yourselves, of course. And so I do have a varied background as a clinical social worker, an educator. And what actually was happening for me in my private practice where I see different individuals for counseling is I started to notice lots of teachers showing up at my doorstep. And I'm the type of person who recognizes patterns, and I said, gee, there's something happening here, and I'd like to really, be a part of figuring out what can be done and how to go about that. And so that really brought me to wanting to do research around teacher stress and burnout. So I'll be sharing some of that today with the mentors so that you can really have a picture. So part of my research involved 4 specific teachers in a setting and really in-depth analysis of what they were experiencing. So that's really exciting for me to share with everyone today.
Good. So integrate that in as we're talking.
Okay.
I have a few questions for you just to frame the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And as a clinical social worker, can you tell me what degree you were seeing teachers actually affected by stress?
Sure. And I think one thing we want to think about is the difference between stress and burnout.
Okay.
When we think about stress, anyone can say, I'm under stress. That's inherent in being an educator. That's inherent in any profession. So the difference is between stress and burnout is stress is, obviously dealing with the various factors of teaching and being overloaded, and that might even involve being overwhelmed at times.
Okay.
But burnout is actually a condition that exists in education. Many people don't realize out of any of these so-called helping professions or professions where caregiving or working with others is involved, teachers are actually at the highest risk. So you could think about, physicians or other practitioners, you could think of psychologists or social workers, and just all of the different nursing, we know there's high burnout in all of those fields, but teachers are at the top. So that's one thing I want you to think about as mentors, the fact that teachers are at the top of that list. And so,
go ahead.
What I want people to know about burnout is, the concept originated in the 70s, and people started to talk about it in professional realms. But the telltale markers include something called depersonalization, which basically means there's a disconnect. You just start to almost just really pull back and withdraw. It also can involve cynicism. So just, a feeling, I'm not making a difference, and just a feeling of angst and maybe even anger or skepticism. And then it can also involve emotional exhaustion, which is very different than day-to-day stress. Emotional exhaustion really can lead a teacher to start to just work mechanically or to just kind of check out, or, and this is really important for us to think about, to start to resort to punitive measures with their students.
Okay.
So we know that stress and burnout affect that classroom climate. And the bottom line, as you think about what that impact can be, is that the students are affected. So there's a big toll and a big consequence to stress.
And that's why I wanted to put the stress management in Module 5, when you look at your agenda earlier. I had it originally in this course later because I guess I was waiting till the holidays when people really do get stressed out. And after looking at the agenda, I thought it was more important for the mentors to know what the signs were. And
Yes.
we talked a little bit about the consequences
Yes.
of a new teacher resorting to those measures with their students because they are overwhelmed and they just want the students to sit down.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to manage that because the routines and rituals may not be in place. And I know in a later module we will get more detailed with classroom management.
That's right.
But I decided to put this earlier because I think there are ways in which we could see some of those signs before the consequences. Or is the consequence the sign? I don't know. Is
Well-
that the sign for the mentor to know that the new teacher might be leaning towards burnout as opposed to stress?
Well, I think,
What do you think?
we know that one of the greatest roles of a mentor is to listen
Okay.
and to watch. And so that's something I can encourage everyone to do. And well, what does that mean? What do I watch for? What do I listen for? So you recognize as a mentor the stages of teaching. You know, we think of like you were mentioning, at the holidays tends to be a time when the heat is turned up. That first initial part of the year where you're desperately trying to establish your routines and get everything in order and get your bearings. And we know there's certain, in testing times, there's various points in the year that certainly can be escalated stress times, and that's certainly inherent in the process. So, you know, giving the support, you know, really making sure you're checking in at that point, and listening for, you know, asking, you know, how are you doing? Are you making sure that you're setting boundaries with your work? So again, we talked about working to the point of, you know, in a mechanical fashion, to the point of true exhaustion. Checking in to make sure, you know, how many hours are you putting in when you're going home? Are you setting limits? Are you sometimes just going out for dinner with somebody? Are you making sure you're getting to your exercise classes? You know, are you making sure on the weekend you get out somewhere and enjoy nature? I mean, those are just questions that you can ask, and you can listen to those responses. The other main thing that you can do is you can look at, you know, how someone's presenting themselves. You know, we can learn a lot by watching body language. We learn a lot by affect. You know, and that's part of the relationship in mentoring that's so unique, is to be able to say, I see someone, you know, come in, they look exhausted physically, they look like they're not rested, they look like they're, you know, maybe they might be talking really quickly out of anxiety. So it's really their rhythm, you know, watching for that and asking the question. And then certainly we know it can show up in the classroom if you see someone, you know, really unraveling, or maybe, again, we say punitive measures, just really not in control. And I don't mean that in a, you know, a hardcore way, but when they're just really not feeling a sense of being effective. And that's something we can talk about today, and even in our other modules. The sense that one is effective has so much to do with their feelings of stress. If, you know, and I think that's the nature of education. You know, Richard Elmore talks about, you know, you're trying to fix an airplane while it's in flight. So we know there's a lot of layers and a lot of system stuff that goes on that's overwhelming. So how do we, you know, really work with the teachers and pay attention to make sure that it's not just the typical level of stress, but it's actually at a point where we really need to say, and I think at any level, whether someone's on a mild or a real intense level of stress, we need to present those resources right up front. We need to give, you know, teachers permission to say, you know what, I am really stressed out, and I'm going to be careful because burnout is an occupational risk. So I really feel it starts with our conversation here. It's about educating people that this exists. Many people don't know teachers are at the highest risk for burnout. So that's a huge piece of this, just giving them permission and a safety within your relationship where they can say, I feel stressed. Teachers tell me all the time, I'm afraid to say that. I think they're going to let me go if I admit I'm stressed, or I'm going to feel like it's a signal of, you know, moral weakness or a moral failing on my part. And it's never that way. if someone wasn't stressed, it would actually be pretty shocking.
Because it's a stressful job. It's
It
a
just
stressful career. So the signs of stress and the causes of stress right now, as mentors, we're all knowing it's new teacher evaluation is coming in to play.
Yeah.
That's going to be more stressful for the mentor and the new teacher. The mentors might be listening to this saying, I'm stressed, thinking about this new thing. And now we have a new teacher who doesn't know the lay of the land. They don't know the culture of the school. They don't know who to talk to, when, what those reactions are. So it is overwhelming. And that's why I wanted to put this topic together with the navigating school culture, space, values together, because as mentors, this is something that could minimize some stress, that you could actually be helpful, because I can actually hear people saying, well, so what am I supposed to do?
Yes.
We're all stressed. We all have the new teacher evaluation. We have new Common Core coming in. We have MCAS either leaving or staying. There's always something in this profession that is making us feel unsettled.
That's right.
So how do we ground ourselves and what can we do?
That's right.
And one thing I believe mentors can do that's very concrete is to actually share where the resources are in a school to make those things less stressful or less confusing for a new teacher.
That's right.
Because new teachers that I've been working with don't want to come to the mentor and say, I need help.
Right.
They've graduated from college, they've done all their prep, and they don't want to hear the criticism.
Right.
Well, I thought you learned that in college.
Right. Right.
And it's tough to teach school culture in college. You have to be in the
right.
culture.
That's right.
And that's something the mentor can do professionally and confidentially
That's right.
that could minimize that social stress. I find that to be one of the biggest stressors for these young teachers and career changers, is just the misunderstanding of the adults and how schools actually operate. It's very surprising to people from
It
other
really is.
careers. They're
That's
like,
right.
I can't believe you get anything done operating in this environment.
That's right. That's right. I hear that all the time. You know, people say it's sometimes the other adults or just,
Yes.
and
It's not the kids. I love the kids.
Yeah, and it's the point of how do you navigate through that in a
Yes.
healthy way,
Yes.
and how do you still link arms with others who are like-minded, who really, you know, have their eyes on developing a strong professional identity and capacity. But
Yes.
it's very difficult, and I think that's such a critical point, Carol.
So that's where we want to underscore the role of the mentor in being very concrete
Yes.
around those specifics to minimize those stress. So we're seeing where people do get stressed, where new teachers, career changers get stressed. We have some ways in which we can help them. We're listening, we're observing to try to minimize. But the word that came to mind when you were talking was balance.
Yeah.
So how do we talk about balance as a clinician? How do you talk about balance with mentors and new teachers who just seem to have that work tip because you're always doing it at home or thinking about it? And talk a little bit about some things. I know you have your stress workshops that you've done with managing stress.
I think, again, as we've talked about, there's a learning curve and there's stages of teaching that everyone needs to have a good awareness of. So again, as mentors, to be able to say to teachers, you know what, this first year is truly going to be difficult if a teacher's in a first year. Just really prepping them to sort of have a sense of what things could feel like and be like. And as you mentioned, really, you know, as simple as it might seem, the certain resources you as a mentor might take for granted, pointing them out, connecting people, connecting teachers to teachers. Oh, this one had a good idea, go check with them. That is very, very powerful for teachers. That can really help mitigate the effects of stress. So when you think about balance, it's not something that can just be easily achieved. But one of the ways I like to think about it are boundaries. You know, how do I set time boundaries, knowing the day starts at the crack of dawn, it can go late into the night, and how do I stop myself from not, you know, just always, not only doing the work, because what teachers tell me is, it's not just the fact of I'm always working, but when I'm done working, then guess what? I'm always thinking about the work.
That's true.
That's such the nature, because all day long you're bing, bang, bang like a pinball machine. And then at the end of the day, your brain wants to process everything and debrief it. So that
Yes.
might be that you're just actually thinking and you're stewing in it, or it might be
Right.
that you're talking about it and people in your life are saying, oh, I don't want to hear
I
one
know.
more story. I had a teacher say to me, I just go out to dinner with people who are not in education because they don't want
To
to
take
hear
a
it.
break.
And then I'm able to sort of transition. So a lot of
Mhm.
times what teachers, find helpful is some sort of transition, because it's
Okay.
very hard to go from that full absorption and being in that mode and switching gears. That's very hard for a person to
Yes.
do that. And so one of the ways to think about that again would be, what activities can you involve yourself? Whether they involve, and again, think on those healthy levels,
Physical.
movement, exercise, fresh air, nature, reading something even outside of, say you teach math, nothing, stop reading all the math books, give yourself a break, those kinds of things, activities that really, we're all different. You might like to kayak, I might
Yes.
like to hike, but finding that
Moving.
that outlet,
Okay.
helping teachers to find outlets
Okay.
really is vital, and to really give themselves permission to do that. You want them striving for excellence, of course, but we don't want to be perpetuating burnout by not saying find your outlet.
Yes.
It's really important.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
I'd like to bring the voice of some of the new teachers into this before we wind down.
Mhm.
And I interviewed a new teacher just recently, and I asked him, I said, if your mentor could only do one thing,
Mhm.
what would it have been? And Isaac said to me, he said, I wish that they had taught me how to navigate the culture a little bit better.
Yeah.
And it
Uh-huh.
fits. I was
Uh-huh.
reminded of that as
Right.
we were talking about it, that he got very nervous. He knew his content.
Uh-huh.
And the mentor kept trying to help with the content.
Yes.
And he felt comfortable with the content. Yet with the schools and the tests, I think mentors, we all feel that that's where the focus should be of our mentoring. It has to relate to student learning.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the students can't really learn if the teacher is unraveling
That's right.
and feels insecure in that learning environment, that
That's right.
space.
That's right.
So I want to underscore that. But you also have some stories from your dissertation
Mhm.
of teachers and how they managed
That's right.
and responded to their urban environment. And I know many of the mentors watching this and taking this course are in urban schools.
Mhm.
I think it might apply to all schools,
Absolutely.
but this setting was particularly challenging.
Mhm.
Do you want to just say a little bit about that and see how it fits in with our conversation?
It really fits perfectly because really at the bottom, with everything that I learned from the teachers was that the mentoring relationship and that ability to have a safe relationship where they can get support on a variety of levels was really crucial. Sometimes teachers talk to me about not having that and how that, impacted them in their development as teachers. So really having meaningful interpersonal connections with you as mentors, with other teachers, as I mentioned before, family, friends, colleagues, that is so important. The other thing, you're talking about, well, what things can contribute to the stress?
Mhm.
Certainly, I think that you might have even said the word, the uncertainty.
Yes.
That takes a toll. Am I doing this right? Am I effective? Is this how it goes? How do I navigate the system? What do I do with the student that I'm having a hard time connecting with? I mean, the questions go on, and without support and a sounding board and an ability to, have that role model and have the safety of that relationship, it becomes extremely stressful. Think of all of us, we internalize that, you think it's something I'm doing wrong, or just to know, look, we're all on the same boat, this is a natural process, that can be incredibly important. And so that, and also one thing that I think mentors can think about, you're doing this professional development yourself, so the mentoring, the professional development, even as mentors, you might be positioned in your schools to say, to your administration, hey, let's get some things about stress in. I think that's going to become, I really have a belief that there's a tremendous need for that. So, I've heard people say, when we have those type of stress trainings, guess who shows up? The school counselors.
Yes.
But the school counselors have had a lot of that.
Yes,
So the teachers,
yes.
Look for those, should be encouraged to look for those opportunities as well. But certainly the uncertainty can take a toll, and not feeling supported. When teachers don't feel supported, that really can perpetuate stress and burnout, for
So
sure.
your teachers presented themselves that way, but then they had ways that they overcame their stress.
Yes.
And what were some of those, so we end on a hopeful note,
Absolutely.
that new teachers are managing, and all of this is positive in a way because we're bringing it to the mentor's attention.
Yes.
So that it actually is part of the agenda, not just focused on student learning through content.
Mhm.
What were some of the things that the new teachers did that managed their stress in the study?
Well, let's keep it, we'll keep it, very simple at a
Yes.
basic level. Think of pop psychology, and we hear
Okay.
so much about positive thinking.
Yes.
So think about that for a minute as I describe. When we think about stress and burnout, one of the telltale things about stress and our ability to be resilient, which
Okay.
is what we all want,
Resilient.
to be
Okay.
resilient. But how we do that is when we're in the face of adversity and stress, it's how we're making meaning of it.
Okay.
It's our take, it's our look at it. So when you first hit with something, there might be a panic. But then you have time to digest
right.
and you say, okay, well, here's a solution, or here's a possibility, or maybe it's not so bad as I thought, or maybe there's exceptions to the rule. Maybe I have a really tough class, but maybe there's 3 students who are doing well, and there's a bright spot there, and I can build off of that. And so that really is the essence of it, is looking at, what are the things we can build off of, and how am I interpreting this? Am I looking at it like, it's my fault, I'm broken, I'm not a good teacher, I'm not capable, or am I looking at it as this is a growth process, this is something that's going to happen over time? So really, as mentors, as teachers, as educators, we all have to keep that at the fore. We have to really say, how am I looking at this? How am I determining, my performance, if you will, or my efficacy? Am I looking at it like it's a hopeless situation? And you hear lots of people talk about that when they're burnt out. They feel a sense of hopelessness.
Yes.
So, to end on this note of thinking, helping people, and that's part of the mentoring relationship, that soundboard. I've said it out loud, now I can process it. Now the mentor can say, well, did you think about it like this, or did you try this, or could you connect with this one? They had the same struggle. That's really important. It's all the interpretation that can
Yes.
lead to very high stress levels.
This is very important that you're saying it at the end, because I have seen mentors who actually just agree
Yeah.
with it, and then
Uh-huh.
it brings the new teacher down.
Right.
So this is a perfect place for us to close, because I think this piece of advice is crucial. So what I'm hearing you say is, let people vent. New teachers do want to vent. And another new teacher just said that to me the other day. My mentor was great. She let me vent, and then she stopped
Yeah.
and said, so now let's look at it another way.
Perfect.
And
That's perfect.
I now am understanding what she was doing
That's
from this
right.
conversation.
Yes.
So that positive piece. Well, thank you, Kristen.
My
I've
pleasure.
loved this. It's been wonderful.
Me too.
And what we will do is post some PowerPoint slides where Kristen has some other resources available.
I do. I want to point everyone to
Okay.
those. I have a lot of
Okay.
information about stress overload, burnout, where you can sort of really look at what the statistics and research say about it, and then also what you can start to think about. We've had that conversation today, but resources that you can find. And feel free, I have my contact information. If you want to shoot me an email, if you have questions, I would really enjoy that dialogue, so feel free to do that. And again, I think you'll find the PowerPoint just a nice supplement to our discussion.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.